Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The regular meeting of the Grosse Ile Township Planning Commission will come to order. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item is find out if there are any additions or deletions to the agenda. Anybody want to make any changes?
Move to approve as presented.
Motion to approve as submitted from Kurt.
Second.
Support from John. Call to question. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Agenda stands. Next item are the minutes back from October the 16th. Are there any comments on those minutes?
Move approval.
Motion to approve as submitted. Support.
Support.
Support from Kyle. Call to question. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Minutes are approved. We'll move to the next item, which is public comment. Anybody like to speak to the commission about any item not on the agenda? Okay, no hands, so we'll move past that to the next item, which is our action for the evening. As soon as I can find my notes, that is. Tonight we're talking about the master plan draft for public review. Little background, the master plan is a planning commission document and it serves two purposes. First, it's documenting what Grosse Ile is today and then documents what the vision for our community will be over the next 2 decades. That's the first purpose. The second purpose is that it is the underlying basis for zoning ordinances. All zoning ordinances must tie back to the master plan in order to be legal. So it's a very important document for us. It encompasses multiple elements: land use, housing, connectivity and mobility, economic growth, open space and waterfront, utilities, art, history and culture, government and communications, and there actually are a couple of more. I just didn't write them down. So it's a comprehensive document on our community. We started this work, almost a year ago now, and we're now approaching the last phase of the project, and we're going to be reviewing this draft document for the purposes of determining whether the Planning Commission feels that it is ready to be issued as a draft to the public. The Planning Commission needs to make a recommendation for that to go to the Township Board. And when the Township Board then approves it, that starts the clock, and this master plan then is circulated among adjacent communities and other government bodies that have in 63 days to comment on it. At that point, probably sometime in January or February, I'm not sure, it will come back to the Planning Commission, and any edits that we need to make, in the final version get made, and at that point the Planning Commission would approve it and forward it on to the Township Board. The Township Board then would give their final blessing, and then that process will be complete. Following that will be ordinance changes based upon any changes that we make in the master plan that we're going through tonight. So our meeting goal tonight is to determine whether we as the Planning Commission are ready to move this forward. The manner in which we're going to handle this is first we're going to get a presentation from Kathleen Duffy from the Smith Group. She has been the project manager for the Smith Group, and been working very diligently for us. She's going to give us about a 12 or 13 slide presentation summarizing the plan at a high level. So we kind of get everybody up to speed on that. And then we're going to move into looking at some of the action items. The Planning Commission is responsible primarily for housing and land use. Now, as I said, there are multiple other areas in here, but that the Planning Commission has basically little or no influence over. And those particular areas were reviewed by other committees within the township, and their approval and their input was solicited, so that what you see in the plan that isn't Planning Commission directly related has gone through those committees. Well, they didn't formally vote on them, but their input was solicited. They were evaluated, and so I think we can, with confidence, feel that their input in this process is properly represented in our document. So we're not going to worry too much about that tonight. What we're going to focus on are those things which are specific to housing and land use. And so you have in front of you the paper copy of a subset of all of the action items that came out that were specifically Planning Commission directed. And Ross and I have worked on these, and they're in a different format than what's actually in the report in order to facilitate management of them and be able to read them easily and talk through them. The action items are important. They're important because they're basically commitments. If you're not going to do it, don't say it, is basically what it boils down to. And so as Ross and I went through these things, we looked at them, and first thing we did was basically screen them to see, are there things where the Planning Commission is listed where basically we have no responsibility, okay, where we clean those up and get those off our list. And then we took a look at the remainder of the action items to make a determination. And in some cases, we made some softening of the language a little bit on the items. In other cases, where there were topics in here which certainly I felt from my editing that there were very important points and needed to be discussed with the full commission to make sure that everybody was comfortable before we moved ahead. So we're going to be stepping through in the second half of this meeting, through those action items to see what you all think about this. Now, this can get complicated, and so I thought I was talking to Kurt earlier, and he had I thought a very good idea. In addition to this, going through it tonight, that we ought to think about give these a couple of days of thought, okay, and provide feedback to Ross on things that you might have wanted to talk about, but maybe didn't think about it at the time, but you want to work on them in the future, because we are going to be doing additional editing. That's for certain. I mean, we're not, just because we're releasing it to the public doesn't stop the work that we as a commission do on this document. We're going to continue to perhaps have a study session, on those areas that the commissioners have decided that they want more information on or want to discuss with the group, between now and when the 63-day period is up. So there's more work to do on this. And so just want to make sure everybody has the expectation about what is coming. So I hope that's clear. Does anybody have any questions on what we're doing tonight, why we're doing it, or what our path forward is for the next couple of months? Gee, I guess I was clearer than I thought I was. How about that? Okay, then I will stop at this point, and we're going to hear from Kathleen. Welcome.
Good evening. Happy November. It is crazy that we've been at this over a year now, and I'm excited to work on this draft with you all in the committee. The biggest changes To the master plan, obviously it's a flashy new format that we hope is easy to read and navigate and reorganized a bit to be highlighting the priorities that we heard during the engagement process. We've done our best to update the data and updated a bit more refinement with transportation and the open spaces sections to make sure that those were highlighted as key priorities in the community. Everyone loves the green spaces here, so making sure that that was resoundingly prioritized, as well as safety related to transportation. We tweaked future land use, not a lot of edits, but just a handful in order to make it a little bit more flexible and set you up for some potential zoning changes. And updated the goals and recommendations and kind of consolidated them into 5 big ideas. So those 5 big ideas include recommendations based on trends. A lot has happened in the last 20 years, and we wanted to incorporate all the recent feedback that we received from the public and from you and from the steering committee and staff, and so they're kind of packaged into those 5 sections. And then we took a closer look at Macomb Street, Water's Edge, and Commerce Park as well, both related to redevelopment potential and possibilities, and just a little bit more of a focus for some recommendations moving forward. So, as John stated, this is a guide. This is a plan. It's an overarching vision for the community. When it's adopted, it'll be a policy document. It should provide you guidance for decision making and guidance for future zoning ordinance amendments. It doesn't mean that everything is rezoned the minute you adopt the master plan. The future land use is the guide for future zoning changes. As I mentioned, there are 5 key goals or big ideas in the plan related to housing, connectivity and mobility, economic growth and prosperity, open spaces and waterfronts, and then quality of life kind of is a catalog of a variety of things that make Grosse Ile so desirable, township services and reasons why people move here and want to stay here. So each section in that goal section, it lists the main goal statement on the cover page, and then gets into a variety of supporting documentation related to data. Again, some of those best practices, some of what we heard from the public and how it relates up to that goal. It provides some objectives, which are kind of the more detailed version of the goals of what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to accomplish at the conclusion, of this plan's lifespan. And then a toolkit, so some tools that can be adapted, again, kind of through that lens of best practices and things that can help the township along the way implement components out of that section. So each of those 5 main goals has those components to it. We've shared this with you before, but we thought it was worth repeating. The visioning and values session that we had with the DDA and Township Board last year, plus the public input, resulted in a vision that Grosse Ile Township is a sustainable and tranquil community where residents of all ages thrive while preserving the island's unique character, exceptional recreational opportunities, and natural beauty. And then values, which weave their way throughout the plan. So we wanted to make sure that these helped guide the recommendations related to resilience and adaptation, recreation and adventure, community and collaborative spirit, and health and safety. When it comes to land use specifically, like John said, this is the backbone of the plan. The goal for land use is to maintain well-connected neighborhoods, minimize impacts on the surrounding natural environment, and make it easier to build development that matches the community's needs. So inherent in that is trying to make sure that your zoning is as up-to-date as it can be and as flexible as it can be. Again, we really wanted to focus on each of these key areas. And so for Macomb Street, we looked at the vision that the DDA worked on a couple of years ago and did a walk audit and met and had strategic visioning sessions specific to Macomb Street, knowing that's the heart of the township. And so some tweaks suggested to zoning to make sure that it is a walkable main street that has housing. I think we talked about where adding housing makes sense in the township, and Macomb Street is a very logical place to have more people within walking distance to help secure the types of businesses that everyone's looking for. So having that really be the hub of activity there, so you can keep the kind of tranquil nature of the rest of the island. But also having an opportunity to kind of make sure that everything in that vision plan gets embedded into zoning and into future streetscape enhancements, and again, support for finalizing the Lions Park plan. For Water's Edge, we looked at how to strengthen connections between it and other bike networks and trail networks throughout the island, how to connect it better across the street over to the marina across the, right across the street, and making sure that's safe for people when they're coming to dock their boat, that they can make it up to the restaurant and have enough fun activities and things to make that a very useful, vibrant recreational node for the community. And we met with the Commerce Park Commission several times and brainstormed how we could update that plan. And so the idea is to continue what was in the previous plan of making Macomb Street really the walkable commercial node, and Commerce Park more of the businesses that don't necessarily fit in that walkable node. So a variety of businesses that both on the airport side and the Commerce Park side that support the airport, that provide jobs, are looking for compatible uses with the airport and other light industrial uses. But the biggest change there is evaluating. In the previous plan, it said future development. We talked a little bit more about what that future development could be to the north, and with the closure of Meridian School, provide some opportunities for the commission to work with the school district in the future, we hope, and that could be a prime opportunity to have some housing that kind of matches its neighbors tucked behind. So when it comes to changing on the future land use map, I'm pretty sure it was one of the last times I was here to talk with you all. There aren't a ton of changes. What we did do was combine there was a residential kind of character map in your old plan, and we layered that in with the future land use map. So all of the different housing types are, neighborhood types are on the same map. So we didn't think it was too busy to do that. We talked about this at one of our previous meetings, how we don't really like to promote districts that say public or semi-public, because that limits what those owners, whether it's the township or the school district, can do with their property. And so we like to show those on the map as being the adjacent residential district is our typical use for those, or adjacent district, so that if they redevelop in the future, they redevelop to something that's compatible with their neighbor. We just renamed the Commerce Park mixed-use district for simplicity's sake. We combined the special environmental district with the outer islands. They had similar long-term, don't anticipate any development happening on them, and didn't think that they needed to be separate anymore, just for simplicity's sake, and to streamline things. And in general, we reformatted how it all works. So we tightened up the narrative, put things into bullets, and tried to show how they relate to current zoning districts, providing some suggestions based on all the feedback we heard for what the uses should be and the character. A lot of the text is straight from your old plan. The biggest changes, like I said, so are those blue areas. This is your old map. So the public and semi-public areas, you can see nearly all of them were converted to just be the adjacent residential district, which on this map is just that one yellow district. But on your new map, we showed more variety of those character types. And just changing Meridian School to be that orange attached residential district instead of public. The cemetery becomes public open space, things like that. And just tweaked one little chunk of on the opposite, so on the north side of Macomb Street, making sure that all aligns with what's already in your zoning as well. For, again, attached housing, kind of behind the main street. So the first big idea is this goal around housing, to maintain Grosse Ile as a wonderful place to live by promoting a variety of housing types for residents throughout their lifetime. So a lot of these objectives tie back to that idea of this is such a wonderful place to live. We want to make sure we maintain that, but also acknowledge, we've got a bit of a declining population. We want to make sure our schools and tax base remain strong. And are there opportunities for some tweaks here and there to allow families of different sizes? People are looking for a little bit more variety these days. So where can we, where does that kind of housing type make sense? And we decided, again, along Macomb Street, in that northern part of Commerce Park, and letting those areas that already have it be next to where we already have existing density rather than trying to incorporate it into any new places, really. So really trying to suggest some things to make sure that your residential zoning in the future is as easy to use as possible, so that we can get those other housing types built. There's some things in there that are impediments to that, but are easy tweaks in your zoning ordinance that can happen after the plan is done. And really just encouraging the whole overall neighborhood character and everything that makes the township so lovely through sustainability and connection to natural resources. For connectivity and mobility, we want to maintain and enhance a transportation system that offers safe and efficient mobility for all users and abilities. So this is really a high priority that relates back to your non-motorized, your bike and ped committee, and highlighting that very first objective about the bridge. We heard loud and clear that has an effect on a lot of decision making that happens in the township, whether it's you as appointed officials, the township board, but the residents as well. That having that both from a safety standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint makes a lot of sense to have those bridges be prioritized. But we understand that the township doesn't have control over the streets, so we wanted to make sure that we outlined objectives with you that promote what you're looking for, so that when you're working with Wayne County, it's very clear that you want to have great connectivity between different modes of transportation, which you're already working on with trails and bike connections, and making sure that everyone is safe. So economic growth and prosperity kind of relates into land use a bit in terms of how we talk about businesses. So this is where we incorporated a lot of the recommendations from the DDA's economic enhancement strategy, and so weaving those two documents together so that your master plan supports everything that plan was saying as well, and updating it to make sure that it gives you, again, that framework for businesses. Again, particularly along Macomb Street and Commerce Park, you'll see those specifically called out here in the objectives. Just making sure that, again, we can do all that we can to be a welcoming and hospitable environment for businesses. A lot of people want more small businesses, destinations to eat and drink and buy retail, and so how do we make sure that Macomb Street is good for that? And again, re-emphasizing that Commerce Park has its own set of uses that make sense there, and just really making sure it's easy enough for people to live and work on the island. Number one thing that people love about living here is the environment, whether it's the open space, the connection to the water. So again, emphasizing those connections and also tying back to recreation and everything that your Recreation Commission is doing, referencing out to the Parks and Rec plan, since that's its own plan. We didn't spend a ton of time on this, but again, using that as that's a reason a lot of people move here. And so just promoting recreation as a strong aspect that relates to maintaining quality of life, and preserving all of the wonderful spaces that you already have, and capitalizing on those views and access to the waterfront. Like I said, quality of life is kind of a bucket full of smaller goals and objectives, but things that are important that we wanted to make sure were maintained in the plan. But to John's point, there's not as much that you can do around these, but as a planning commission, but I think they can still help guide your decision making. Things may come up related to public art and making sure the relationship back to the Department of Public Works and other township infrastructure is balanced with transportation systems and land use, as well as that overall just being safe and having good. You already have great texting and red alerts. Make sure that stays in the future, and as technology changes, this is supportive of whatever might happen in the future to make sure that there's a strong bond between residents and their government. So these are just, again, these kind of quality of life related things related to how people see and use the community regularly. So as John mentioned, tonight you're reviewing a draft. does not need to be a perfect draft. It needs to be a really good draft. And we can make tweaks before we send it to the township board. The township board will authorize distribution of that to initiate the public comment period. And that 63 days is a minimum. We're ready to get the plan adopted, but we want to make sure that you have time as a board, and over the holidays, if it pushes it a month or so, make sure that that plan is built around the consensus of what we hear during the review process, that you as a commission are comfortable with what's in there, that the incoming township board as well, and staff. So fine-tuning those implementation strategies is absolutely the top thing that I recommend commissions do during the review process, because you want to get it out there, you want to get people thinking about it, but as you're editing those action steps, having the public's comment on things often helps guide your level of priority, a preliminary kind of guess that we have in there. It's nice to get that feedback to help kind of guide your direction. So as John mentioned, we're looking at a January, February, kind of wrapping up that process and initiating your public hearing, your approval of the draft that then goes to the township board for adoption. So with that, that's what I have to present. Any questions?
Nice presentation. Let's see first if there are any questions from the commission, then we'll see if we're going to be going back and forth to the public several times during
Yep.
this meeting.
Absolutely.
So let's get some comments first from commissioners. Kyle, let's start with you.
No specific comments at this time, except overall, I like the direction that things are going, and I think it's really well put together, well done. And for me, even just seeing that part about connectivity and the bridges, that's a big part of why the township is moving on the toll bridge proposal. Having that data early on, I think shows that the master plan already is having some impact in how we're responding to the public and what the township is doing. So, I'll start there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan?
No specific comments right now, but I just want to mention I have been reviewing some of the data in the master plan, and it seems interesting and seems like it'll definitely be helpful for decisions for the planning commission in the future here.
Jay?
Yeah, hi. The one thought I had as I went through here, I thought these were all things that we've discussed, and I I hate to be too wishy-washy, for lack of a better word, but where it says conduct an audit, conduct a comparative analysis, consider revising, I'm like, yes, those are all the things that we should be doing. And then it says amend the multi-unit design standards, and I said, well, can we get the consider word back in there? That's, and I get that this is a draft and we're going to get community feedback before finalizing it, but that's just kind of the piece as I read some of these things. Some of them are consider and some of them are do, and I want to make sure that we have sufficient feedback from the public before moving on to committing to those things that we are going to, especially the things that the Planning Commission is committing to do. As you said, Mr. Chair, that if we say we're going to do it, we darn well better be prepared to do it.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've said in the past about how I'm excited about this whole master plan update. I want to commend everybody that's been working on it and thank the public for everything that they've put into it. So just excited. I agree with everything I've been seeing up there. Just one comment is that I do still owe our consultants as well as the township a map for the bike paths and plans for the future. So that is something that will be done in the future very shortly. Just been a little busy at the moment, so just heads up.
Oh,
You're overdue, is that what you're telling us?
Yeah,
Okay.
those comments
I just want to
surprise me.
be transparent on that.
That's great though, John.
It's really interesting. Back, how many months ago? 14 months ago, we started this, right? And there's been a lot of conversations with a lot of groups. This group more than 4 or 5 times in the Commerce Park and the DDA and the residents, and all that information was just scattered all over the place. And boy, I'm telling you, I'm really impressed with how it all came together for this first draft. And like Jay said, there's some verbiage that we need to make sure that is right. is correct in the understanding of it. But for a first draft, I think, Ross, you and your team did a great job. So, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Con. Kurt?
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I mean, with what Jay said, when you take a look at some of the things that you must do versus consider, contemplate, I think we want to provide options. I would like to probably collect a little bit more data as well over the next, like we said, next 60, 70 days. I think some of the presumptions are right on, and then I think there's others that might need to be tweaked. But obviously, it's a good first step.
Kurt? Yeah, there has been a whole lot of work that's gone into this for sure. And certainly from my perspective, this is ready to go to the public. One thing about a document that is complex as this is, they're going to be things that you particularly like, and they're going to be things that you particularly don't like. Okay, you're not going to get unanimity with respect to all elements in here or that are in here, but of key importance is the fact that whatever the outcome is, it has to be tied back to hard analytical data. You're not just reaching for the stars to grab something. It has to be it has to be anchored to numbers that you can look at, to feedback you've got from the public, from commissions and committees, in order to make sure that it's not just a blue sky wish. It's got to be real. And so, I think, as Kurt indicated, there are some areas where I think that we could strengthen some of the data analysis. And I won't go into them tonight, but these are things that we can work on specifically. I just as a general point, I got to thinking about data that's available from our treasurer's office, our SEV data, our lot coverage area, the floor area, whether it's an apartment, when it was built. There's a lot of things in there that really are useful information that I think, even though we have a lot of data in the system, I think there are opportunities to even be more specific. And what I go back to is something that happened in 2019. We had someone from a realty group, and I can't remember who it was, came in front of us, and they presented us with information. And what it was a compilation of census data for 2010. It was, if I can find it, probably can't with all this paper, but there was census data in there. There was the assessor's data, and it really did an excellent job of breaking down, really in much more detail than what we have in our report, exactly what's here. And further, it took SIMCOG data and forecast out to 2045. It was really quite a comprehensive document, and then behind that were all the units on gross yield that were for sale at the time. Okay, so you could look on there and you could see how many people are 65 and older are living alone. Okay, right now, what in 2000? What was it in 2019? Now that's when this was done. And then what is it projected to be out in 2045? So you can see trends. You can see how you go through different, how it evolves. And I thought that was an example of a really useful information. And they broke it down by age group. They also, in looking at housing, we make statements, and we know for a fact that a lot of our houses were built in the earlier times, 1960s, 70s, 80s, or whatever, and you could basically correlate that with the size of the house. And what you find out is, 1960s, 70s, you get smaller houses. Lo and behold, 1980s rolls around, the township changes their R1B to R1D, with larger lot sizes, and all of a sudden, homes get bigger. Okay. Interesting things that you can draw conclusions from that can be basis for potentially additional consideration. when I find that in this mess of paper I have up here, I'll, at the end of the meeting, Ross, I'll share that with you. And, I don't know how much of it we ultimately want to extract, but I think it should be looked at and to see what there is beneficial that might be additional data, analytical data for that housing section. So, it was just very coincidental in going through my old papers that I happened to find that, and I thought, gee, that was really good. So that's one comment. I guess the next comment is more directed at the action items for implementation. Now, Jay has mentioned that about softening, and that was something that in fact Ross and I were absolutely working on, as we're very concerned that 5 years from now or 10 years from now, when there are 9 different people sitting up here, that they look at this and they it's like being given an order, and perhaps with not having the full background that we have, since we were part of putting it all together. This planning commission should absolutely always consider. We have to be open to new ideas, to change, to evaluate options that'll benefit the community. That's what we're here for, no doubt about it. Okay, and so I think that we should go back through these action items and soften these perhaps some more. It's not with the idea of not doing it. It's with the idea of making sure that the right mindset was directed at it. We're not giving orders to somebody 5 years down the road. We're saying, consider this, and that's what they should do. I think I'll stop at this point for a minute, and let's see if there are any comments from the public. Yes, come on up. Welcome.
Congratulations, first of all. I know it was a lot of work to get you here. A couple of questions. So will we get, after this meeting, will we be able to see the actual presentation or the language, or what would the public have access to?
Ross?
So after the township board meeting, if the planning commission does vote to authorize the distribution, we'll go to the township board on the 6th, which is Wednesday, and if they approve, then it'll be on our website that you can download and click and look through. So
And see the actual language, or?
correct. Yep, from start to finish. Yep.
Great, okay. And then I was wondering, how are you going to get public feedback on it? Are you going to do similar to what you did before?
So on the website, there will be like a comment box, if I understand correctly. Yep. And then we will also be receiving emails, anything that's regarding that directly addresses the plan. We will consider that and reflect that in the final document of the plan. They'll have a public comment section, and whether, how we address that comment, whether we dismissed it or adopted it. Then we'll also have a public hearing in January or February, where the public will be able to come out and comment on the plan in person too.
Great, that's helpful. Then one last thing, just curious about what went into it to try to get some younger families coming to the island. I know, just hearing that the school's really struggling with the student count going down so much and they lose so much funding. I didn't know if there was anything in there that could help that issue. Keeping in mind, I love open space, but.
Well, the fact that the population on the island is aging showed that. And the fact that the age group, basically the teenage age group, was dropping, as were the parents from the age of 45 to like 60. Those two buckets, were basically going down. Surprisingly enough, the age group of like 24 to 30 and children under 5 actually was growing.
Is it really?
Yes, absolutely. It was a surprise in the data.
Yeah.
And that actually is, I think, Kathleen, that graph is in there somewhere, isn't there? I remember seeing it.
The age group
The age group distribution? I know it was a working document.
I can speak to that. If that's, I mean, yeah,
I
it's
don't-
not surprising to me. Those are the millennials. Those are folks like me, came back to the island, having young kids. It's a little. I think you called it early on a mini baby boom or something like that. But from what I've read of the data and understand of it, it's not a sign of something that's going to replace what you're talking about, Mickey. It's we're a big generation because our parents are baby boomers. The other big generation. What's coming next is not looking good after us, is what I will say from my understanding of the data.
Okay. Yeah, because I just saw the chart at the Board of Education meeting, and it just really showed the students dropping off. And so that was my concern.
Yeah, it's a very big concern. And if I may step in right now and just say that is the central concern, and I don't think there's agreement on how to tackle it. And as Mr. Schweikart said, there doesn't necessarily have to be an agreement, but as long as we agree that it's something that needs to be tackled, I think that's important,
Wrong, but I heard it was more a national issue too, not just Grosseal.
That's right. No,
yeah.
not just national. Michigan is a big issue, but I will say, and obviously the experts are here. From my read of the data, Grosseal is worse than Michigan, even though it's a Michigan-wide issue. Yeah.
Additional thoughts? Yeah, come on up.
I'm Bill Heil. I live on East River Road. Hi, John. I have mixed emotions, but I think that's probably appropriate at the moment. A number of you have made comments that are similar to what I have in my own heart. Dan, John, Kurt. There's a variety of factors that are interrelating. How do we make them interrelate? How do we promote them? What are we going to do for the future? We have a place we have lived in all our lives or for very long periods because it's pleasant, what's good. Do we take enough factors into consideration on how we move forward to do it successfully? I've got a question on something that to me means a lot just because of my experience being here on the island, and that deals with our piping here, the underground, our fresh water supply, our drainage. That stuff is expensive, and it's approaching 100 years old. And what I'm saying on that one issue, I can go on with a couple if I have a moment to do that, is that you might want to build a palace here or something there, but by gosh, if your sewer system isn't getting the stuff to process properly, you've got a problem. And I'm not hearing anybody say anything about what we have done for a long-term approach to our utilities. I mean, I can remember. I'm sorry, I don't remember the commission I was listening to, but it might have been either. I think it was the airport commission, but somebody, for whatever reason, maybe it was a DPS, commented that a board here on Grosseal, decades ago, went out and we paid for the roads ourselves with a 2% loan, and ran it over 50 years. And in my mind, that was a stroke of genius. Because what it did was it found a good opportunity to make a solid investment that was meaningful for growth, that was at a good price, and people who were going to use it for 50 years got to pay for it. We weren't listening to logic that said if we pay for it in 10 years, we'll get it done and save on interest. We're letting the guys that used it pay it, and they could take that savings in cash flow and use it for other things. And I think that the housing issue is a very important one for a lot of reasons. The point is that we need to figure out what we need to do just to pay for the nuts and bolts as well as to fulfill our dreams, and figure out where it's going to come from. And the answer is it's going to come from property taxes. That's the way the law is written. And if that's the case, it might well be, in order to fund everything, we're going to have to develop more property to tax. I'm not talking about asking somebody to like this. I'm talking about recognizing a real need and reality. I mean, the first one that comes to the top of my mind, for example, are pensions. How many police chiefs have we had retire in the recent past? That's a load to the pension system. I'm not complaining about it. I'm just trying to explain an example that comes to my mind. Thank you. I needed that. The the point is that all of those issues have to be addressed also. I think that this document that you're describing has done a good job of bringing to our conscious minds an element of opportunity for discussion. Its success will be on how well we are willing to cooperate with each other, to be open-minded, to be creative, to recognize we might have to give up a little of something somewhere, and one of our past dreams gets stepped on a little bit to make it happen. I don't know what I'm talking about, but if it used to be a school on Meridian and now it's something else, maybe one person won't like it while another will think it's fantastic. Governments don't generally please everybody with every decision that they have made. I'm looking forward to maybe having an opportunity to, if we still have a document for the old plan and the new one, to look at them and compare them. I would be very much in favor of not only figuring out what these needs are here, of how many restaurants we'd like on Macomb Street. I'd like us to see how we could put in some practical means of taking care of the drainage so that we don't have a new connection for a burst pipe and it's all cobbled up like having old dungarees when I was a kid that had patches on the knees. Those things, because the ground shifts, break and have leaks. They're always in the winter. It's costly to maintain that. We need to make sure we have, I passed a bunch of pipe, I can't remember where it was recently, but they have these big machines that pull it through, and we need to take that into consideration when we're talking about that as well. But I'm optimistic about this for a start. We need people, we have people here with a variety of views who have invested themselves with care and with love into this community. We need to try and cooperate with each other to fulfill as much of that as we can. We're going to have to make some hard decisions somewhere. When you talk about mixed use, and this person has a house they love and it's on Macomb Street, we might need that as well as something for a senior citizen development. One of the marketing needs is the fact that a lot of people who love to be here are getting mature. And in that maturity, they don't want to take care of that big lot they used to have. But at the same time, somebody with kids and they're starting out can't afford that situation. And if we've got some property somewhere where we can manage to balance those needs, some here and some there, that would be worth something. One more point. I think that for what I'm talking about, trying to get some answers together by February is kind of fast. You've got a brand new, half of your board's brand new. You've got new clerk, new treasurer, new trustees, new supervisor, and you're dropping this thought on them, and then having them supposed to get into the saddle and come up with a conclusion by February 15th. I'm making that up to make my point. These things have to be perused and worked on. We've got this situation where an awful lot of the public, I've put a lot of thought into these bridges. If these bridges don't fly, a lot of this stuff we're talking about won't either. And the big problem is simply money. And what I'm talking about there is a failure to understand that what you pay in your tax bill isn't covering the roads. You get your money from gasoline taxes and registration fees. And then the state of Michigan decides how much each of you gets, you being usually counties or cities or whoever. Well, what Wayne County gets, and I don't have an exact number, Brian, you might know more, but I'm going to say 80 million a year is a round figure number that's somewhere in the ballpark. And that's for everybody. If a guy needs a new bridge in Northville, that's where it's coming from, okay? Now, we're sitting here with needs over the reasonable foreseeable future of something approaching $200 million. We're not going to be, we're going to these guys and saying, the law says you're supposed to take care of us, Wayne County. Well, you can't get blood out of a turnip. The way it's set up, it's not going to work all that way. We are going to have to educate ourselves to find ways to talk to the state and the federal government to make our case to be effective and to do something with it. We're unique to a degree. The law says we have a right, but all they say is that it's suitable. What does suitable mean? Who the hell knows? There's never been in history a case of a lawsuit where anybody could argue about it. The reason I'm sounding so vehement about this is a lot of this has to be settled before the rest of this stuff can take place. I mean, good grief. You know, we have to get our groceries from Kroger. If we can't do that, where are we? But if we can't do it for ourselves and we need to grow the community, but we're all going to be starving. We're not going to be able to make it happen. We have to think, is what I'm saying, and do it creatively and cooperatively. Thank you for the pulpit for a minute.
Oh, sure, that's fine. A couple of comments on that, too. Ross, perhaps you could outline the fact of what happens after the master plan eventually is approved and the zoning process that changes after that, and the timing that you and I and Brian were talking about earlier this afternoon. I mean, nothing is happening overnight.
Nothing is happening overnight, that's for sure. and this has been, I'm not sure how long you've been paying attention, but we've been working on this document for a year and 2 months.
Right,
so
right.
up to this point. So, and yeah, to John's point, a lot of these changes occur over 20 years, and a lot of them we won't be able to get started on for the next 10 years. There's immediate needs for sure. Focusing on Macomb Street, for instance, or Commerce Park maybe, but it takes a lot of collaborative effort from many different commissions, nonprofit organizations, community members to accomplish this, and it takes a town to do that. So it is a very long time. So.
And quite literally, the day this is approved, whenever that is, in February or March or whenever, nothing changes. Okay, nothing in the zoning ordinance has changed. It's the same the day after as the day it was approved. It's only after we as a commission go to work on the highest priority ordinance changes do we start to roll things through, and those things take time.
Yes.
They take
I'm grateful
weeks
to hear
and
this.
weeks and weeks, and in order to sort out with meetings and public hearings and multiple passes, ultimately ending up at the township board. Okay, so the fact that we may state a goal out there in the master plan, doesn't actually impact the things you're talking about
Thank
until
you.
we actually take the next step with your approval or with the township board approval.
You needed that.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I hope that answers your question.
Yes,
And yes, as far as getting documents, Ross has anything that you need in terms of old document versus the new one.
Okay. Thank you. We'll talk after, when's that new one ready? Not now, we can't have it till sometime.
Till Wednesday.
Thank you.
Wednesday. All right.
He'll take care of you. Thank you. Additional comments? Okay, no hands. All right, let's come back to the table now. And I want to get the sense of what you all want to do with this now. You have these pages of action items. There are 9 pages, 10 pages of various things. You can see the areas that I've highlighted where it says PC discussion. Do you want to go through that tonight, or do you simply want to have a study session on it? This could roll through with the action items exactly as they are right now, or we take the time and take a first shot at it. What's your thoughts?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
is there any specific reason regarding timing that we approve these action items tonight?
They can go out as is in the document, in the master plan draft document, as is with no change. It doesn't affect anything.
Do we need to push this forward tonight without potentially getting into some of these discussions that you just referenced?
The discussions are not necessary tonight. We can have a separate meeting on that after we address the approval. Now,
That's what I'm saying is, do we want to do the approval and then come back to this, or have these discussions before we do approval and come back next?
You're talking about tonight?
Yes.
Go in either order. You want to make a motion to approve it? We can approve it.
Well, I guess my question is, do we have to, or can we just table all these motions to have these conversations and come back at another date to,
With or without, okay.
For me, oh, sorry.
Help me out here. Are we talking about approving the document and then holding out everything else in abeyance until we have a separate meeting? Is that what you're saying?
well, not approving anything tonight,
Not approving anything tonight?
right?
That's an option.
Because we're looking here and we're looking, okay, you want to remove this one here needs a discussion. You're recommending that we remove this. I'm assuming the red is your comments, right, John?
Reds are my comments, yes.
Okay, so you want to remove that, edit consider compatibility, have a conversation, remove. So were you hoping to have those conversations on every one of your comments tonight, or do we want to go back and have these conversations in a study session, then come back and then approve?
I actually think it would be far better to have this discussion on these action items in a separate meeting. After you guys, after everyone's had a chance to really look at these things, you may find other things on this action item list that you want to discuss that I didn't even pick up on. Okay, and if everybody takes a look at them, and comes back with what they think we need to discuss, then have a special study session to go through it.
Yeah, so Ross, so if we just approve these comments and discussions that John and others want to have, we could still have those even after we approve it? Is that, what would you like us to do at this point?
It's whatever the planning commission would like to do. I mean, as far as timing goes, if we would like to get this adopted in February, then it would be recommended that we adopt and then make these edits over the 63-day review period. And we can hold several planning commission meetings throughout that period to really vet through these comments. But it's whichever the commission wishes to do.
But if I could just ask
Go
for
ahead.
clarification, if I remember what was said at the beginning right, and if I'm understanding, we have to approve this as a draft to refer it to the township board so that they can start that 63-day clock running.
Releasing it.
And yeah, Mr. Chair, if I
Releasing it.
Right.
yeah, can I jump in real quick, Mr. Chair? Semantics, and I don't want to argue verbiage. You're not approving anything with any action tonight.
We're releasing
Nothing's being approved. You're simply saying the draft is complete and in good enough shape that we're ready to go out for public and agency review. That has to go through the board. So you're making a recommendation to the township board to initiate the public and agency review period. That would be your only action.
So then, so we release this to the township board, go out for public comment. At the same time, the planning commission can discuss all these things, add its changes, come back, and then add those to, add those to the edited or the suggested edited, okay. All right,
And the 63-day clock is a minimum, right? So if you all feel like you need to keep it on, we can go back 63 days, but it just starts the clock.
So, okay, can I make a motion that we just approve the document as, the draft
it.
as submitted?
To release the document,
Release the document?
please make a motion.
I did, but I used approval, but submit. I'd like to make a motion that we release the document to the township board for their discussion and approval for 63-day period of public comment.
There's support.
Support.
Yeah, we have support from Brian. Discussion. Just a couple of, another point. We got to remember what time of year it is. We've got Thanksgiving, we've got Christmas. Okay, there aren't going to be lots of opportunities for planning commission meetings between now and then for 63 days. And so 63 days may come and January will roll around, we may have our first study session. There's nothing that says at the end of 63 days that there automatically comes back to planning commission for a public hearing and removal. We can process it until June if we want to, if that's what it takes for us to be confident that what we finally send to the board is correct. And the last step in our process is public hearing. So any changes we make are going to be managed at the public level through that process.
So then, would we remove the 63-day specific in my motion then, or does that matter?
No,
You could say no less than 63 days.
okay, we have a friendly amendment.
Oh, yes, so
Friendly amendment.
no less than 63 days.
Brian, you okay with that?
Sounds good. Support.
Okay, everybody understand what we're talking about now? All right, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, let's go ahead and get that ball rolling. And I would ask everybody to, take a look at the housing section, take a look at the action items that are here. Make sure that if you disagree with any of these action items, or you think that they need to be expressed differently or whatever, go back and look at the underlying recommendation, the underlying objective that drove that specific action item. Because that's in essence where all these come from. And these have to be tied. Or missing. There you go, that too. Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question while we're in that process?
Absolutely.
Because I note the comments several times, will remove PC from this item. What, does that mean that, and I looked through the document, didn't find the examples, but I'm assuming there's somewhere in here that says the planning commission will develop RFQs, something like that?
Yeah.
And we're saying, no, planning commission doesn't develop RFQs.
Correct. A lot of those, the planning commission was one of several groups that were listed. Okay. And I went through and screened them and said, well, we have nothing to do with RFQs. And so scratch us off. That's what that means.
Okay.
It doesn't mean the item doesn't get done. It just doesn't mean we don't do it.
So just to kind of clarify that
Okay, Kathleen, go ahead. Sorry.
often in the action plan, you may not be the lead agency doing it, but it would sure be nice if you could be consulted. We would recommend the township board consult the planning commission if they're going to go out to RFP for a publicly owned site, for instance. So don't think of it as you're doing all of them. You're one of the responsible parties. So it doesn't mean that you are on the hook for that, but we wanted to include you in as many as we could because then you're being consulted. Otherwise, you don't have a say in some things. So whether or not you can adopt or what your authority is per the state, you can still advise and provide recommendations and support things and provide support is the intention of those. So think of it that way too.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to say, in those cases, does it make sense to kind of note the objection that we don't want to be considered as running a process? In other words, friendly request here through the chair. So if, I'm asking the chair if it would be okay to ask this. How's that? That we get some language suggested that would kind of meet what.
Yeah, there's actually, there's responsible, there's accountable, and then there's advisory.
Okay.
Okay? The person the group that is actually doing the work is responsible, okay? The township board might be accountable for our for what we do, okay? And then there's advisory. Advisory then is the category of all these things that are here. But there's, like you say, there's no distinction as to who's accountable, who's responsible, or who's an advisor. And that's your point. And if I got to a point where it's advisor, I simply deleted it, or asked to be deleted.
Is there a reason you'd rather the planning commission not be advisory on those items?
I don't care. Well, I didn't want us to be on the hook because somebody could look at that and say, well, all right, planning commission, what are you doing about RFQs? Well, nothing. Okay. Don't want that to happen. If it's advisory, and we say advisory, that's great. That means somebody else gets called about doing this, and if they need our help, we provide it.
Okay.
So that was kind of the idea.
Gotcha. So you're okay with advisory? That's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
Okay,
for
gotcha.
sure.
Yeah, gotcha.
In fact, probably a lot of those, that would be a good way to split. Yeah, exactly. So that we know exactly who's responsible, to make that happen, and who are the other parties associated with it? That's something we could think about? Okay, good. I didn't think about that option when I was saying delete.
Yep.
Mr. Rathel, did you have something?
Nope.
Or was that Kurt?
Mr. Koblak.
Mr. Kovalak.
John, I just think we need to coordinate with Ross and the planning commission schedule, because obviously we need to come back. Obviously, this is being released for agencies to look at it. We can be one of the reviewing agencies now, right? So we can come back, sit down, kind of stretch some of the stuff out, so that when we get to that January meeting or February meeting, whatever it is, we'll be a little tighter in our consensus as to what the document should read and how it should be presented. So,
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. And we need to speak with one voice when we get to the end on this. And that means it's going to take more work to make sure that everybody understands exactly what's there and exactly what's being said. And to Bill Heil's point, there's no rush on this. Okay, as he points out, new board coming in, trying to get their feet wet, so to speak, are going to have other things besides the master plan as high on their priority list, I'm sure. And so if it takes us a little bit longer, that's okay too.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I think it's important of what you said earlier about data, all right? So I'm sure the public and other agencies will have, input based upon their own experiences, right? So I think it's very important that this commission, when we come together collectively, right, at the end of this whole thing, and we have our input, that it is based on real data, right? Not a personal feeling, but, data that supports whatever we come together as. Question is, how is the best way for us to go and get that data, and what type of data, especially on the housing, do we want to get and provide the commission?
Well, that's a good question. Just as an example, I passed out that handout of just a simple way of looking at a very small element of housing to share with everybody. It was just simply looking at a distribution of house sizes, distribution of SEVs, and what conclusions you can draw from it. I intended to share this with Ross has got it, share it with Kathleen. Again, not necessarily as the only thing that needs to be done, but as a pattern. And I was going to also share that document I referred to earlier that I got from 2019.
Okay, good.
That again can be evaluated to see what merits it might have in our master plan. So that was kind of the way. Now, I've been working with Ross on this pretty regularly. He's getting tired of seeing me over there. Locks the door when I come, but I try not to take it personally. But also, after talking about chicken coops today, we had Brian and Ross and I had a discussion about some opportunities where in the course of our normal work we can pick your brains on this as well. So, that's going to be going on as well. Since Brian has been our planner for many, many, many years, we want to make sure that we pick his brains as well. So there's ways, and from that will come requests. Hey, we think maybe this is a good idea, and then pass it on to Kathleen and see what she thinks. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth. It's kind of a nebulous answer I've given you, but it's the kind of the best way
I think it's that outline, and so I had a chance to review your handout earlier, and it's detailed in its simplicity. It's a great document, and there's some general conclusions that could come out of this. But I think what I liked is what you were saying about that real estate agent that came in 2019 and had some more data on, specifics, right? Because we do have an aging population of people that have
they're big family homes that want to downsize and stay here. You know, they want to downsize, but they don't want to downgrade, right? And then, like Bill had said earlier, you know, what opportunities exist, if any, and where for a Groseal starter home, right? But it's important to know that a Groseal starter home is going to be a lot more money than a starter home off island, right? So, you know, these terms don't mean the same here in Groseal as they would off island. You know, what are the numbers that we have for real? What's the growing or declining population? What opportunities we have where, right? You know, everybody in this whole study said open space is very valuable. I don't think there's anybody I've ever talked to that was an advocate of selling open space, right, to build. Did you raise your hand?
I did mention it as not saying specifically that I want to, but I think it should be on the table based on a variety of different priorities out there where you select like what might be the best. So I'm just putting it out there that I did mention it.
Okay,
as
well,
a
I will
possibility.
never have that conversation with you, okay? And it's a good thing you didn't run for the board this time. So that's what I was getting at, and I think that you gave me a great answer, John, with Brian and Ross and Jay and Kurt. I know Kurt loves to do that, and I think we have a lot of good people that would be able to provide that information. So.
Okay, good. Thank you, John. Okay, anybody have any other thoughts on this? Kyle, are you comfortable?
Yes, no, I'm very happy. Thank you to the Planning Commission for releasing this. I think that's the most important thing. This will allow the public to see it alongside the Planning Commission, which I think is going to be an important part of the whole process. So thank you all.
Dan, final thoughts?
Nothing else at this time.
Jay, words of wisdom?
None. I'll talk anyway. No, I passed up the opportunity to compliment the process. It's we've got a really good start here, and I'm excited where we are. But there's still obviously, you know, we're kind of at the rubber meeting the road point here, where, you know, the details of what is it that we really are committing to is the next step, and that's going to be the next hard part. Getting it into this state has obviously been a lot of work. So I congratulate and thank our planners, both internal and external. So thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Brian, final thoughts?
No further comments. Just enjoy what I've been seeing.
Okay. John, final thoughts? Kurt?
The only thing is, I think, Ross, you're going to work hard to try to get us all together over the next few months, you know, with Thanksgiving, Christmas, Super Bowl, whatever it is, right? I guess I would just suggest to the commission that when Ross reaches out to all of us, we should try to respond as quickly as possible so that it's easy for him to coordinate a date or dates so that we can all get back together, because it would be good for everybody here. So if there's someone on the commission that wants to sell open space to build a house, we should hear about it at one time, all together at the same place. It helps the discussion. So, you know, John has some information. It'd be good to get that out and discuss it so that we can understand it a little bit in greater detail. So if Ross reaches out, please get back to him as quickly as you can. It makes his job a little easier.
Sure does. I
Like
appreciate
he's
you.
like chasing after chickens.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Brian. No more chicken talk. Sorry.
Which does, Mr. Chair, which does bring me to my next point.
Yes, Ross?
Yep. How soon would we like to meet again on all of this? Do we want to anticipate? I know Brian comes in first Monday of every month and third Wednesday. As far as scheduling,
How does the first Monday in December look? And can you look at your calendars?
December.
2nd of December. Yep.
Is this, are we putting that down?
Yes.
That's what we're. Yeah.
December 2nd?
Yep.
Yeah. Would you send out something so we can get with Eric as well?
Yep.
You know, what Kurt said is very important. This is not something where 5 people show up and we have a good discussion. This takes all 9, okay? We need everybody's brains in on this, Okay, so it's important that, we try to accommodate schedules so that, we get a full complement of our strength.
Mr. Chair, in the aim of transparency, I most likely will not be available on December 2nd. So I'd be happy to provide comments ahead of time or figure out ways to make it work for the rest of the group if that's the date that works, but that's a pretty,
Okay, well, maybe you could take a look at those action items there and start to pencil in for yourself, what thoughts you have that we can share. How about that?
sounds good.
That would help us. Thank you. Okay. Kathleen, thank you very much. I think at this point, we're to the point of Chair's report, and the only thing in the Chair's report I want to say is please vote. Okay, if you haven't voted already, make it a point to come over to Township Hall and other places and vote, as your right as a citizen. On that note, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Ah, beat you.
All in favor? Aye.